Our first unit for revision today is Unit 1 about plants. The first topic is about photosynthesis 1.1. And generally, photosynthesis is the process of transforming carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen with the help of sunlight to provide food for the plants. The equation for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide plus water will become glucose plus oxygen. And it is also useful if you can remember how to balance the equation. Wait a minute. Okay, so we will continue. We have known that there are two reactants in photosynthesis, which are carbon dioxide and water. But for photosynthesis to happen, we also need chlorophyll and sunlight. Photosynthesis takes place inside the chloroplast and it contains chlorophyll, which makes the leaves green. Chlorophyll captures sunlight and carbon dioxide enters the leaf through stomata. Water are absorbed through the root and stored inside the vacuole of the cell so that later on it can be used to transform into food. There are two products in photosynthesis, which are oxygen and glucose. Oxygen is actually a waste product and leaves the leaf through stomata. The glucose have a lot of purposes for the plants. It is stored in the form of starch because starch is insoluble in water, while glucose is soluble in water. Also, glucose can make cellulose, fat, and oil. It is also a reactant for the process of respiration in plants. Glucose have purposes like it can also make amino acid with nitrogen. Amino acid is actually the building block of protein, and glucose and magnesium can make chlorophyll. The next is we're going to talk about the experiment on testing for starch in leaf. Usually when we test for starch in food, we'll just drip the iodine onto the food and see if it changes color. But in leaves, the starch is stored inside the leaves. So in step 1, we have to boil some water in a beaker and add a leaf to it to break down the cell membrane around the leaf cell so that iodine can reach the starch inside it. Secondly, after we do step 1, we'll gently use a tweezer, which is this thing, to remove the leaf from the beaker. Step 3, we will collect some ethanol in a test tube and put it inside a beaker with very hot water and put the leaf into the ethanol. The reason we would do this is that the boiling ethanol would dissolve the chlorophyll and remove the green color of the leaf, which later on will be easier for us to see the color change on the leaf. So we have to be careful the ethanol is flammable, so don't put it near the Bunsen burner. And when we finish using the Bunsen burner, turn it off. In step number 5, when most of the color had came out of the leaf, we have to dip it into water. We have to take the leaf down and dip it into water to soften it and spread it out on a tile. And the last step is to drip iodine onto the leaf. If it turns black, then it will have starch. It's just simple. The next topic we are going to talk about is about the fertilizer. The fertilizer provides a lot of essential nutrients for the plants, and two of them are magnesium and nitrate. When a plant is lacking nutrients, we say that they are having deficiency. Plants with deficiency of magnesium have yellow leaves and the leaf edge are pale. Also, we'll not be able to see any spots on the leaves because there are not enough magnesium to make chlorophyll. Plants with deficiency that have deficiency of nitrate will have pale leaves and have stunted growth because the plant doesn't have enough nitrogen to make amino acid, which also means that it doesn't have enough protein to grow new cells. The next topic is water and plants. There are four main purposes of water in plants, and one of them we've talked about before, which is photosynthesis. The other three are to support the plant, to transport nutrients, and it also works as a cooling system for the plant. The first purpose is to support the plant. So plant cells contain water inside the vacuole, and if it has plenty of water, it is strong and firm. When all of the cells have plenty of water, they will press against each other and produce a firm structure. In contrast, if plant cells does not contain enough water, it will be soft, floppy, and wilt. Please turn on the camera, please. Tuấn Minh and Hạnh Nguyên. Water carries mineral salts inside the xylem to transport the minerals to different parts of the plant. Usually we say the xylem have water in it, but also remember that there are dissolved mineral salts. And it could be useful if you can know how the xylem cells look like, because there are questions inside the exam that ask about it. I said that water works as a cooling system for plant because when water vapor evaporates from the leaf, it carries energy with it and reduces the heat inside the leaf. Next is the topic 1.4 about flowers. Flowers are brightly colored to attract insects because they are the reproductive organs of plants. We have known from primary school that flowers have male and female reproductive organs. The male is called the stamen and the female is called the pistil, but we've known it as carpel. The stamen consists of the anther, filament, while the pistil have the stigma, style, and the ovary, and the ovary contain the ovules inside. There are also other parts of the flower too, like the petal, the sepal, the nectary, and the receptacle. Next, we'll talk about the function of each of the parts. The stigma, which is female organ, collects pollen grain using its sticky substance, and the style will provide pathway for the pollen grain during fertilization. The ovary contains ovule, and after fertilization, it will develop into a fruit. The oval contains female gametes, and after fertilization, it will develop into seeds. Next is the male organs. The anther produces pollen, while the filament support the anther. The petal are brightly colored, as I said. It helps attract insects. The nectary produces sweet nectar, and it also helps attract insects. The receptacle support and connects the flower to the stem, while the sepal protect the flower bud and the female organs. Does anyone need to pause to take notes or anything? If anyone need me to pause, then okay, I'll pause for a while. Shall we continue now? Okay, so I'll continue. This is the life cycle of a plant. It has three very important stages, which are pollination, fertilization, and seed dispersal, and we will have to talk about it in detail. Next topic is pollination. For the gametes to fertilize, the pollen grain needs to move from the anther to the stigma of the same kind of flower, which is that is the process of pollination. The pollen grains contains the male gametes, while the female gametes are inside the ovule. It is actually the nucleus of the ovule. There are two main kinds of pollination, which are pollination by wind and by animals. You have to listen to this carefully because I'm too lazy to write it on the slide. Pollination by wind have pollen that are light and easy to carry away by the wind. Pollination by animals have pollens that are a little bit larger, and it has spikes to stick onto the insect's body. And when the insects fly to another flower of the same kind, it will fall onto the stigma of that flower. The next is fertilization. Fertilization is when the male and the female gametes join together. So after pollination, when the pollen had landed on the stigma, it grows a tube down the ovule and the pollen moves down the tube. When the pollen meets the ovule, it fuses with the nucleus inside the ovule and becomes a zygote. A zygote is it's a single cell that is made from male and female gametes joined together. After that, the zygote divides into a group of cells called embryo, which is also the embryo that we know inside the seeds. And the embryo will grow into new plants in the future. Meanwhile, the ovule will grow into the seed and the ovary will become the fruit. After a few weeks, when the flower had, I don't know what word. Well, after a few weeks, the petals will wilt and fall, leaving just the fruit remaining. So, like the fruit comes from the flower. Next is seed dispersal. The purpose of seed dispersal is to have more space, water, and living conditions for the new plants. It also helps avoid competition with the parent plants, which will increases the chances of survival for those individuals and also for the species. Fruits and seeds are adapted to help seed disperse easier. There are four main methods of seed dispersal, which are animal, wind, explosion, and water. Dispersion by animal have fruits that have hooks, which will stick onto the animal's fur, and they can also be sweet to attract the animals to eat them. Dispersion by wind have seeds that are light, like the dandelions, or have helicopter wings, like the maple tree seed. Dispersion by explosion have fruit that can dry out and explode and popping the seeds out like the bean pods. Dispersion by water have fruit that have a spongy covering to float on water, like mangroves or coconut tree. No, coconut seed or fruit or whatever. Okay, so now we will watch a video. Wait a minute. Oh. Where is that thing? Here it is.
What do we call the types of flowers which possess?
Can you guys see the video? Hey guys, I can't see you, so you have to talk. Or at least chat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, we
sir.
can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
What do we call the types of flowers which possess both the male and the female floral parts together? Flowers which contain both stamen and pistil together are called bisexual flowers. Can you name a few examples of such types? Rose, China rose are a few in this category. What about other flowers then? Don't they contain both the male and the female floral parts together? Some flowers, such as those of gourd and pumpkin, possess either stamen or pistil. That is the reason why such flowers are called unisexual flowers. Now, getting back to the process, the first step is that of pollination. It is the process by which pollen grains are transferred to the female reproductive organs of a plant. In other words, pollen from the anther are transferred to the stigma. Does this process occur only between two flowers of the same type? Yes, that is correct. Pollination occurs between the flowers belonging to the same type. And does that mean pollination occurs only between two flowers born on the same plant? That question leads us to the types of pollination. The type in which pollination occurs between flowers born on the same plant is called as self-pollination. So what will the next type be? The other type of pollination is called cross-pollination, where the pollens travel from the anther to the stigma of a different flower on another plant. Can you guess how this process of transfer of pollen grains occurs? For this, there are several agents which aid the process. Agents such as wind and water are the abiotic ones. On the other hand, biotic pollinators such as bees, bats, moths, and birds also help in the process. The process of pollination makes sure that the pollen grain safely lands on the stigma. Let's define it again. It is the process of fusion of male and female gametes to give rise to a new embryo. After pollination is successfully accomplished, how does fertilization occur in plants? Let us zoom into the structure of a typical pistil, the female reproductive part of the flower. The pollination process has caused the pollen grains to safely land on the stigma, which is seen here. For fertilization to occur, the male gametes need to reach this lower part of the pistil called the ovary, where the female gamete awaits it. The female gamete or the egg cell is present inside the ovary. To form a zygote, the female gamete has to fuse with the male gamete. Now, how will this happen? It is made possible by a structure called the pollen tube. This tube is formed from the pollen grain itself. The tube travels down the complete style and ultimately reaches the ovary. The tube carries along the male gamete that is safely taken to the ovary. Now, once the gamete reaches the ovary, the two fuse, giving rise to the formation of a single cell. This is the zygote, and the zygote will further develop into an embryo. Zygote formation in plants marks the completion of fertilization. What happens next? What will happen once fertilization is successfully accomplished? After fertilization, the ovary develops into a fruit and ovules develop into seeds. In our previous video, we learned the fertilization process and what it leads to. The process helps in the formation of fruits and seeds enclosed in them. The seeds are the structures containing the embryo within. Now, all that's required is proper rooting of the seeds in the soil. This will result in germination and thus growth of a new plant. But now the question arises, how are these seeds fixed in the soil? Do they always get rooted near the parent plant from where they arise? Or sometimes at distances as well? Seeds can be dispersed to nearby or distant places as well, all thanks to the process of seed dispersal. The process by which seeds are dispersed to distant places by various agents is known as dispersal of seeds. Who are these agents? Seeds are transferred to various places by factors such as the wind, water, explosion, and animals. These agents make the process of dispersal of seeds easier. Let's now discuss about this process in detail. Our first agent of dispersal is the wind. Seeds of plants like dandelions have parachute-like or hair-like structures attached that are so light in weight that they easily get carried away by the wind. Thus, even the seeds get carried to distant places. What is the next agent we have in our list? It's water. Fruits which float, such as those of the lotus and coconut palm, are carried by water. You won't believe that coconuts can travel for thousands of kilometers across seas and oceans. Hard to believe, but they do. What is the next type of dispersal? Let me name it for you. It's called the dispersal by explosion. Did I just say explosion? You heard me right. Then what exactly explodes in a plant? In some cases, fruits or pods containing seeds burst on their own. The pods dry and split open suddenly with considerable force, which throws the seed at a distance. What are the examples of such type? We have plants like broom and peas which belong to this category. Now, these were all the abiotic agents. Last in the list are the biotic agents which we need to have a look at. Biotic means living organisms. So, are animals also responsible for dispersal of seeds? Yes, they are. Tell me one thing. What do we do with the seeds after eating juicy fruits? We generally throw away the seeds, right? Yes, That is how seeds from a plant growing in one area reach a completely different area. Plants are even benefited with the seed dispersal by animals. To understand this, let's take the simple example of birds. Birds also relish on the juicy fruits that have seeds within. In many cases, the seeds of the plants are too tough to germinate if planted directly into the soil. Now, if such a fruit is consumed by a bird, then the seed does not get digested in the bird's body and is thrown away directly. However, the hard seed cover softens a bit due to the chemical activity of the acids present in the bird's stomach. So as the seed passes through the bird's gut, it gets soft, and when it drops on the ground and gets rooted, it becomes easy for the seed to germinate. This is how animals can help in far and wide dispersal of seeds. Can you name some seeds which belong to this category? Blackberry, cherry, apple, and so many pulpy fruits have seeds that are dispersed by animals. Now tell me, why do we need this dispersal process? I mean, what will happen if the seeds from the parent plant get planted near it? Being near the parent plant would severely affect the growth and development of both the plants. And why so? The two will start competing for sunlight and water. That is the reason why seed dispersal is extremely useful for plants.
Okay, so now we'll have a quizzes. Wait a minute. Hear this? Please join the quizzes and we can have some game. Our lesson will be done after the quizzes, so at home you can do the exam question that I just post on the chat, okay? Later on I will give you some of the links too. You don't have to do it, but you can watch it again. The video and the quizzes for practice too. Is there anyone that's not in yet? Oh my god, my grammar. I'll start the game, okay? My pronunciation. I'll end the game in 2 minutes, so finish up the quizzes, okay? I'll end the game now. Okay, so we've done the lesson. I've posted the quizzes link so you can do it at home. Also the exam questions too. You have to finish it. It's kind of short. 2 paper, it's really short. There is a PowerPoint and a video link too, so you can watch it if you want. And that's it. Okay.